I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, I mean, on that, that's what we had talked about before is you could, if that's how you wanted to access it, right?
Yeah.
That's the idea behind the filtering was that this is what you would want to do. The other piece was that the filtering is really kind of your where clause. So if you do access stuff back, you can use that partition for that, and then you could go into it.
So you can just have easy access to these smaller files, especially for the web.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are the advantages over other compression formats with that? Because, I mean, obviously this is Barren Fig.
There's a lot of different reasons for it, but for us, it compresses really well and it's extremely fast. And for this type of stuff we're doing, it's kind of standard, just to go with it for those reasons. Yeah. Any other questions?
Can you speak to what IntegraChain as a company does?
Yeah. So we do healthcare supply chain management, and we have a whole bunch of different projects across that sphere. Should I go into project specific or? So the one that I and Ethan, Nadie, and Alec have been working on is one of our newer things that works with specialty pharmacy drugs. And it's all about getting patients what they need quickly, helping them stay on their medications, which can be really important when we start getting into spheres that include chemo and things like that. But as a company, we do have a really wide array of supply managing tools for pharmaceutical companies to use. So just think. But yep, so we are employees of IntegraChain. IntegraChain has allowed us to work on open source while we're doing this. So instead of keeping everything closed in, when we see parts that we can split out, we can open it up to the open source community so other people can use it and work with it. I'm Rain Schaefer, and please feel free to fork our GitHub, give us issues. We've been trying to keep up on making sure what can be added is kept track of, if there's bugs, anything else, but always open the feature requests too. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, I will get us set up for our next presenter. Any preference who goes next? Allie, Sarah, Cassell?
All right, I'm going to pull up your slides and stop sharing this one. One of the things that I love about being at Indie Hall is I am a total Luddite and I have no idea what technology is. So when I have conversations with people, especially during show and tell settings, and it's like, this is what it's like when I tell friends about Dungeons and Dragons. Who's like, we're using words that we recognize mutually, but none of this shit means the same thing for you and I. So like, fork our GitHub it seems like a really weirdly obscene phrase to me, but I don't think it actually is. But yeah, I'm sure it could be. If y'all want to hear more about Dungeons and Dragons, I'll do a show and tell myself someday. All right, I think we're good. And I'll put you in presentation mode. Great. All right, same thing, Allie. If you would do us a favor and you can just use this microphone to broadcast to anyone who's joining remotely. Our next presenter is Allie Loggin.
Hi guys, I'm Ali Loggin. I've been a full-time member here for a year and 3 months. This is a little bit about me. I started working here at Indie Hall last year. I think it's been almost a year since I did show and tell. I work for a really awesome company called IncenFit. We're a corporate wellness benefits company, but a simpler way to explain that is if your company uses us to give out employee perks, we will pay you to exercise. It's great. Say hi to me if you see me. Our whole team is over here. There's 14 of us now. I'm the content marketer, the one and only marketer on the team. So I'm involved in a lot of writing on our team. That is what the majority of my day is. And it's really hard. So today I'm going to talk about why writing is scary, why it sucks, why most of copywriting is bad, give you some examples, and talk about how we can do it better. This is my good friend, Eric. He is also an Indie Hall member. He recently moved back here. He's a writer. He is a literary agent, and he writes a lot about why writing is terrifying. So if you follow him on Twitter, you can see beautiful gems like his writing process, his love of Broadway music and writing. Has anybody seen Waitress? It's great. Yeah. I'll read this just in case anyone on Zoom is not reading it. Writing tip: the Broadway cast recording of Waitress musical is perfect to write to. And the opening song is "What a Mess I'm Making." Perfect. This is my favorite meme right now. It sort of describes me trying to make content. Started making it, had a breakdown. Bon appetit. Who here is a writer or would consider themselves a writer? Who here has to write literally anything for work? Emails, customer service stuff, product descriptions, Slack messages. Yeah, writing is super hard. Who likes writing? Cool, that's what I thought. I recently got to go to a content strategy conference in Minneapolis where 1,000 really nerdy people who really love writing got together to talk about writing and talking and writing. And Erica Hall is one of the architects of the content strategy scene. She literally wrote the book on content strategy. Her most recent book is about conversational design. So she was talking about now that we have all of this AI and chatbots and things like Alexa, designers and engineers are now having to figure out how to write like humans, but for robots, and how that can translate to being better at writing overall. Because you kind of know when something is a robot pretending to be a human. And so conversational design is really difficult. But she shared something that I thought was really interesting, which is why writing is so difficult and conversation is so easy. She gave this super quick history of 200,000 years of communication. To speed through it, we've been talking for 200,000 years. We've been using pictures for 30,000 years, which enabled us to go from one-on-one communication to starting to tell stories that people could read even when we weren't there. 6,000 years of writing at all, 2,800 years of any kind of alphabets, and only about 569 nice years of movable type. So that's how we were able to write things down and ship them to people across the world. It's also only been about 7 years of emoji, just FYI. So she says that writing is hard for us because it's not natural. Communication is the original, or conversation is the original communication tool. It's the first thing that we learn to do when we're babies. The differences between writing and talking is that writing is something that is solitary. It's passive. You don't have to be face to face with someone. It's mediated. It allows us to share complex thoughts. It also gives us the opportunity to be really tedious. Whereas talking is immediate. It's participation, it's direct, it's social, it's one-on-one or in front of a group like this. I can't necessarily be passive when I'm having a conversation with you. And if we translate that into writing, has anyone seen this bullshit? When we let our writing get passive and complex and tedious, we get business writing and jargon like this. Leverage innovative marketplace solutions. What the fuck does that mean? But then if we think about writing as talking, we could get something like this. Trello is the free, flexible, and visual way to organize anything with anyone. It's pretty good. This is a little bit better. This is Slack's original tagline, be less busy. And their subtext is relax, your team's communications problems. We got that. Slack brings all your communication together in one place. It's real-time messaging, archiving, and search for modern teams. So it's kind of the same thing as leveraging innovative business solutions, but not at all. I'm going to throw my team under the bus a little bit because I love them dearly. This is a customer service email that we had to send out recently. So this is an example of writing if we're solving a problem. We had a bug that was messing up people's data, and they didn't see things in the app that they should have seen. So we sent out an email that looked like this, but a better way that we could have done it if we were actually just talking to them is to say something like this. Our tech team's on the case. Good news is your info isn't lost. Everything will be better by tomorrow. That's a lot easier than if their data is not syncing. Once we push the fix, all the data should show. I'm sorry, Rob. Rob's amazing. He's one of our sales managers. So I've been pushing our team to start to change the way that we write by thinking about it as having a conversation, by thinking about it as how we're participating with people, and if we're actually communicating better with them. Here's one more example. What does this company do, you think? Yeah. Yeah. And at the heart of everything they do is a commitment to your overall delight. How many people have seen business mission statements and company communications that look like that? How many have written ones that look like that? Yeah, it's real bad. Don't do this, please. This is what I feel like when I am seeing things like that. I just discovered this company called Barren Fig. They make really, really nice notebooks. And I think they have one of the best company boilerplate statements here. We make tools for thinkers. If you have thoughts, you are a thinker. Yep. Cool. So a lot of writing is bad. A better way to do that is to figure out how we can make this interaction not a writing interaction, but a communication, conversation interaction. I'm going to just skip these because I did a lot of things. Basically, these are the tenets of having a good conversation. How to talk good. You give just enough info, not too much, not too little. Don't say something that's not true. Be relevant. Be clear. And don't be an asshole. Say what you mean when you're writing and when you're talking. An example of what not to do is this. But this follows all of those maxims. It's clear, it's concise, it's truthful. But you're not a writer. All the people who said they're not writers, there's a lot of things that you can do within your company if you're not the person like me that does all the writing for the company. It's whether you're providing directions to people, you're writing emails, you're asking them for information, you're answering questions, you're welcoming them. You can use all of those conversational maxims and thinking about things as a conversation in your writing to make things clear. So I'm just going to leave with really quick tips. I know I talked way too much. I'm sorry, Adam. So these are the bullet points that I shared with all of my team that I'm insisting that they use with everything that they write. So they need to ask themselves these questions. Does it sound like something a human would say? Can I say this in fewer words or simpler words? Can I get rid of the jargon? Does this sound like the person I'm writing for? It's very different if you're writing something for HR managers versus high school seniors? Am I being clear and not clever? A lot of copywriting tries to be clever, and it could just be a lot simpler if you just say what you mean and get out of there. How would I explain this to someone I just met? And if someone I love was listening to my voice say these words, how would they feel? So that Cosmo example, that's garbage. Don't do that. Yeah. And then when in doubt, just keep it simple. That's the best way to do it. Sorry, I talk way too much. Who's got questions about writing?
We're going to take 5 minutes for questions. If anyone has questions for Alex.
That'll just check your grammar. It won't check whether or not you sound like a person. Doesn't check for jargon, unfortunately. Cool. Hey, Sarah.
Like, let's say, for example, it's a technical person, an engineer writing some copy,
Yes.
or a designer writing some copy, and it ends up into your product. What are some of like the biggest examples of things you see that seem to go wrong that can be fixed?
Yes. So like the customer service email example that I shared, I think people try to get too detailed and they try to explain way too much. And they also try to use words that are too technical because it sounds more professional. And I think people err on the side of over explanation, over complicated words because they think otherwise it's dumbing it down or that you're making it too simple when it's really, you could use get instead of acquired. You know, you could use instead of leverage. You can use simpler words to explain what you mean. And that's the biggest issue that I see all the time. I was going to use an example of a mission statement from a place where I used to work, but I didn't want to get in trouble if this ends up on the internet. But their mission statement ended up being 5 sentences long when it could have just been 1 because they couldn't decide how to use things. And they used words like leverage and bring to bear when you could just mean we did stuff. We used it. Simple words. Any other questions? Hey. Yes. Actually, there is the Philly Content Strategy meetup tonight. I can put it in Slack. I don't know where it is. My husband is speaking at it, so I probably should know where it is. But that is tonight. It's a monthly meetup. There's also Philly Chi, which is another meetup. I can put some of these in Slack, but there are a lot of writer meetups for content strategists, designers, marketers, copywriters. There's a lot. Panma is also a good one. Yeah.
Some of it is more writing. Content in like other
Content.
But I feel like if they're like, what do I do?
Like, yeah. Yeah, check out Panma, Philly Content Strategy, Philly Chi. I think that's it. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Pass this off to Sarah, I guess. Yeah.
Give another round of applause to Allie.
Thank you, thank you. I'm gonna stop sharing, so we don't need to do that, and I'm gonna put up your meetup. So, we have a little camera over here, and you can stand in this general vicinity. You're fine. You can be wherever you'd like to. All right, I'm gonna bring. Yeah, it is like. All right. Once this is good to go. Great. So the meetup is right here. So if you wanted to scroll through any of this, you can just do so. But our final presenters today are a duo. Please say hello and give a round of applause to Cattell and Sarah.
Hello, I'm Sarah. This is Cattell. So we are not doing any slides today. We are going to be giving a very casual presentation because we actually hope to not talk that much and actually ask you all some questions. So we're going to tell you a little bit about what we're up to. So we run a podcast called Strong Feelings, and we actually started recording here at Indie Hall a few months ago, which has been pretty rad. And it is a weekly show where we talk about a lot of issues related to work, but not exclusively, but through sort of a feminist lens. And when we started working on the show, you know, we started talking about like, what is this show going to be about? Who we're going to have involved? And we started inviting all of these like awesome women and occasionally some non-binary folks in the show. It's mostly focused on women. We started having all these really amazing guests. Like we had Cindy Gallup, who runs like a VC for sex tech, which is pretty interesting. We had, she's also a riot to follow on Twitter. We had Feminista Jones, who's an activist based here in Philly, who some of you might have heard about. She recently wrote a book on Black feminism and social media. We had recently this woman, Mary Pfeiffer, who is a sociologist in her 70s, who was famous in the 90s for this book about adolescent girls and is now writing about women and aging. We've had so many interesting guests on the show. And then something started happening. So we started getting lots and lots of feedback from people where people were telling us that they felt like they were sitting in the room having a conversation with friends. And we started getting people sort of like sometimes DMing us to ask us about career questions, because me and Cattell would be talking about things happening in our careers. And it would just happen over and over again that people would be sort of like saying, I wish I had this, but in real life. So we decided we wanted to do something in real life. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? You want me to?
Sure. Yeah. So basically we kept hearing, you know, when we listen to the podcast, we feel like we're in the room with you, and we wish that we could like have, you know, carry those conversations forward. Sarah and I are also part of some sort of like work / friend Slack channels where we like get to kind of, you know, have some confident or have some, they're like confidential Slacks where we kind of just like can be vulnerable and be ourselves and ask questions and get support and feedback when we need it. And we were sort of like, could we bring that into the IRL thing too? And, you know, not necessarily at that level, but just kind of like experiment with it and see if we could make a thing where we could foster like sort of closer connections. And so we decided that we wanted to try something and start an event series. Is that where you were going to go?
I mean, do you want to say
Yeah.
something else?
No. I just didn't know if you were like going to say anything else. Yeah, so we decided we thought we would try an event series. So we're going to do 3 here at Indie Hall over the summer. The first one is going to be on June 5th. And we would love to see, you know, many of you there. We're going to focus on money, talking about money and like negotiating and setting rates. For the first one, talking about fair pay, we're going to have a guest. Her name's Karen McGrain. She's actually really big in the content strategy meetup and that scene as well. She's amazing. She's a really great friend of ours too. We've, you know, all sort of like had each other backs at certain points in our careers and friendships. So it's going to be really cool to have her there because she knows a lot about money. She knows a lot about setting rates. She knows a lot about like different aspects of just the money conversation. And we're really hoping to just have like, again, an honest conversation and then sort of have an opportunity for folks to ask questions and learn about that. One of the other things that we've talked a lot about is like having a meetup where we're not just having someone stand up and give a presentation and then, you know, that's it. We'd really love to use these events as opportunities for folks to like practice, you know, maybe practice asking for a raise or like practice having a hard conversation about money or practice, you know, looking at what the work that they do and seeing if they can value it in a way that really makes sense for them. So we'd love to talk about just practicing a little bit and like having something that folks can walk away with and like really feel like they got value out of meeting up together.
So we started talking to a few people about this a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a month ago now, and over what we kept hearing from people was that there were women that we knew who would say things like, I tried to go to women's networking events and they were just terrible. That it was a lot of like, lean in, work harder kind of messaging, or it was all about sort of like faux empowerment was a theme that came up a lot of like, you go girl, you can do anything, which is fine, but without the context of sort of like, what are some of the things that make it hard actually to handle the way the world tends to treat women? And we decided we don't want to do that. There's a strict no leaning in policy. And in fact, as we started talking about this, I have a little quote here from somebody who really, I think, embodied that when we started sharing this around. She said, I signed up. I hope this group is a little more smash the patriarchy and a little less how to succeed, everything is fine than other women biz groups I've tried. And that was a sentiment we heard over and over, that it felt like it was like, you show up somewhere, and I've been there, where like you show up and you have your little plastic wine glass or whatever you're drinking, right? And you wander around and people are just like, I don't know, pitching some thing on you, or having like very, very shallow conversations. Like what Cattell was saying, what we really want to do is to have these opportunities where we can like have small group discussions. There's more intimacy and more vulnerability, and there's also more takeaways, right? So you might actually do an activity and walk away with a skill that you didn't have when you got there. So as we've been working on this, we've been kind of trying to get the word out. One of the biggest things that I do want to say, there's a lot of dudes here in the room, we are asking dudes not to come to these events. So there's been recently a spate of women-only events that have been sued for being exclusive to men. We would prefer to not get sued. So for reasons that are maybe clear, we would prefer to not get sued. There's a question about whether any of those lawsuits are going to hold up in court, but I also don't particularly need to be the test case to find out right now. But we're asking that men don't come. And the reason we're asking that men don't come is that it's not to say that there aren't things that men could learn from these events. And it's not to say that there aren't reasons to have men at events that are primarily for women, but we're specifically trying to make these events feel safer for women to feel like they can open up at and to feel like they're in community of other women. We are inviting anybody who is non-binary or who considers themselves femme to come to these events. But if you consider yourself a man, we're asking you to politely please come to something else. And with that, what we were hoping to do, though, is to spend just a second like telling you a little bit about what we're hoping to cover and hearing if there is any feedback or ideas about like topics we might want to dig into. So we gathered a few people together last week, actually back there, and got some initial brainstorming together, sort of like what are some of the things people wanted to cover, and we came up with some ideas ourselves. So obviously negotiating money, weird feelings about money, that's a big one. But some other things that are on the agenda are things like, how do you be an effective manager when you're also a feminist? And one of the conversations we had with somebody was like, also, I'm kind of a socialist and I don't know if I believe in any of this, and yet I'm also trying to manage people. What do I do? Which is a big question. Or how do you have difficult conversations at work? How do you advocate for yourself in those conversations? How do you get through a toxic work environment? How do you like define different forms of ambition for yourself and what's right for you? Like not everybody has the same goals, but it seems like a lot of things are pushing people toward like one or two paths, right? It's like, should you quit your job and be an entrepreneur? Should you like try to climb a ladder? And like, if those things don't add up for you, what do you do? Emotional labor, the level of emotional labor women are often asked to do in their jobs. That's like a whole extra job that they're supposed to be up to, things like that. So those are the things that we're hoping to dig into. There's a billion other topics we want to talk about, but we're curious, are there immediate questions, gut reactions, or topics you all would want to hear about? Yeah.
Or general questions.
Yeah. Question, thoughts? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've talked about sort of signaling around that. And I think, I think part of it is to say, like, we're trying to make that clear and cultivate that in the community without legally excluding.
I mean, yeah, we won't kick men out, but I think like by virtue of the way we're sort of setting things up, they may not enjoy being there, or they might, and that's fine. But I think as long as they understand that what the point is, like, that's how we'll deal with it.
Yeah, Allie. Yeah.
So I have two really young kids, and I feel like when I talk about that, women in business and all of that, how do you talk about how do you balance? And I feel like the conversations are very shallow. They don't address the realities of what you're facing, and it's just like, fuck up and do it, do the third shift, do everything. And I would love to be able to talk about it in a real and meaningful way about the realities. Here's what my life looks like. I'm coming to work. Maybe I spend 4 hours. Like, I still am a professional person. Serve respect and work really hard. But yeah, I'd love to unpack that a little bit more about what it really is like being a mother.
Yeah, hell
Yeah,
yeah. We talked about that.
That's really important to us too, because we don't have children, and we know that that can't be the only lens. Sarah mentioned that we had like a little get together where we kind of did a little bit of feedback and brainstorming, and there were moms there, and they had the same reaction. So like, we're really excited to hear that, because we want to absolutely make sure that that's part of it.
And that's something we've done on the show. We've had moms as guests on the show talking about issues related to being a mom who's also like wants multiple things in their life, right? Like, and wants to pursue stuff and has like all of these other, hopes and dreams, and just sort of trying to get beyond the kind of like, how do you like balance, I think is such a hard conversation where I think for anybody, and especially for moms, where it's like, it implies that somehow if you just acted perfectly, that there would be some way to make it work, right? And I think that it doesn't really recognize that like, you're always going to be off balance, and like, how do we support that better? So I want to learn, for example, in addition to having moms come and hear somebody like you talking about what it's like for you, for example, I also want to hear about like, how do the rest of us who don't have kids do a better job of making work life more inclusive to people who do, and like make this something that is actually good for everyone. I also believe that if you have moms who are successful working in your company is probably better, because like, people with families go home at night. This is a whole other topic. Yeah. Adam, how are we on time?
You have another 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Yeah. Any other topics or questions? Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Women and aging, women and looks, women and sort of feeling judged for physical appearance. What is the like? And also, I think, this is the kind of thing that we want to talk about. So for example, when we talk about something like how women are judged for physical appearance, we also want to talk about things like, how do you make sense of those imperfect choices? Like, well, I'm going to choose to present in a certain way that's going to make other people more comfortable. And I'm going to do that because I think it's going to be helpful to me in these ways. But I also recognize it's kind of taking something from me, and like really like dealing with that. I think that that's a big one too. Yeah. Anything else? Any other thoughts? Well, Allie, you have one more? We have a sponsor. Yeah. We're going to have extremely good snacks. So, so yeah, we would, I mean, do we want more money for it? Absolutely. But we have a sponsor. So Harvest, which makes time tracking, project planning software, they have kindly sponsored our podcast. And so they're sponsoring these events as well, which is pretty cool. Mostly that's going to be like a lot of food and things like that. But we also are going to maybe get things like swag and like free books for everybody who comes kind of stuff. So like Harvest is pretty cool on that front. Yeah. But yeah, if you have like more money somehow, like if you had like a money bag. Oh yeah, we should set that up. Yeah. Well, so like we said, we are asking that it is no men at the events, but men are certainly welcome to listen to the podcast. We actually get a lot of email from men who do listen to the podcast and feel like it's like something really helpful that they learn a lot about. We will talk about things like periods and menstrual products on the podcast, FYI. So if that scares you off, it's not for you. But I really wholly support men also hearing about menstrual products all the time. So if you want to talk about periods later, I'm ready. We have podcast stickers if you would like to get one or two, and we are available to chat. We're usually here in Indie Hall on Mondays working on stuff, and feel free to chat with us anytime.
So just as a last note, I want to thank all of the presenters who went today. Every month I ask 3 individuals to come and share whatever they're working on, whether it's something in progress or if it's an ambition that they're working on. Maybe they want feedback. Maybe they just want to share an achievement or an accomplishment with the larger group. Or maybe you just want to talk at length about Dungeons and Dragons, which is what I'll do next month. But please, if you want to give a show and tell, it can be about virtually anything. It doesn't need to be a matter of expertise. You don't need to teach anyone in the room. We just want to get to know who you are and what you're about. So you can talk to me or talk to Anea. Our next show and tell, I believe, is... I'll pull it up at a later date and share it on Slack. Our next show and tell is the 3rd Thursday in June, so keep your eyes on that, and we'll post it on Facebook as well. If you want to know more about the presenters who went today, this is only the beginning of a conversation, so please spend more time talking to Rain, spend more time talking to Allie, spend a lot of time talking to Cattell and Sarah, and we will get together again next month. Thanks, everybody.